Thank you. Dear Norfund, dear friends of Norfund. Firstly, congratulations on your 20th anniversary. This has been a truly successful and consequential journey so far. As also addressed in the video and also by the chairperson, Kristin Clemet, and I think some of you maybe have seen a written op-ed in today's Aftenposten written by Kjell Roland and myself. We also have high aspirations for Norfund in the coming years. We live in a time of multiple crises and challenges. Crises involving our security, our climate, and our health and economic well-being. Perhaps the biggest challenge, and at the same time the greatest opportunity, is to eradicate all extreme poverty over the next 13 years. This is an ambitious goal, but if we can pull it off, more than 1 billion children, women and men will be offered a life in dignity. Success in this endeavor will also help us to solve many of the other challenges we are facing, from conflict and terrorism to climate change and migration. Success in eradicating poverty will require a lot of us all, from better governance to the very best of our strategies. But most of all, it will depend on the ability to create jobs. It will depend on the developing countries themselves, and it will depend on the efforts of courageous, forward-looking partners to take the risk of investing in poor countries. It will depend on the ability of Norfund and others to pave the way for private investors so that effects can be catalytic, capital multiplied, and snowballs start rolling from billions to trillions in investment in poverty eradication. Since the turn of the century, the proportion of those living in extreme poverty worldwide has been cut in half. This is truly impressive and historic. But the job is only half done. And even if we cannot let Norfund take all the credit for what has been achieved over the 20 years since its founding, Norfund sure has a key role to play in getting the task completed. 1 kroner invested in Norfund gives 6-7 kroners in yield. So this is the most catalytic investment you can do if your purpose is real poverty eradication and job creation. For the first time in history, eradication of extreme poverty is within reach. This is a unique opportunity for our generation and a huge responsibility for the leaders of the world. As we mobilize our forces to eradicate extreme poverty by 2030, with our Prime Minister heading the group that is supposed to look after this, the advocacy group formed by the Secretary General, we will even enhance our work in fighting poverty, and we have to look on how poverty actually also has been reduced over the last decades to learn from history. We must make use of the tools that have proven to work the most and sharpen them. When we eradicated that much poverty, we have learned some important lessons. Norwegian development aid will remain as one of the highest in the world. But we also have a big responsibility to canalize our resources where they have the most effect, and in such a way that our resources mobilize other resources. Strengthening the ability of developing countries to create sustainable growth themselves must be goal number one. That is why the Norwegian government has increased its focus on job creation and good governance. That is why we have increased our support to Norfund by 25% in the last 4 years. We are walking the talk. That is also why we have bolstered our budget for education by 100% in the same period. Schools are where young people prepare for a meaningful future, where they enable themselves to take up a job and care for their families, and perhaps even start businesses and create jobs for themselves and others. You cannot create growth without creating jobs, and among the major pathways to job creation, you find knowledge, research, and innovation. You also find the courage to invest in the future and the willingness to take risk. You cannot create growth without improving infrastructure, be it in terms of cables, energy, bridges, roads, or rails, or the skills and energy of those that build all these things. Lacking the access to energy is one of the most notable obstacles to development. No energy, no development. But public and private investment must increase if developing countries are to have their energy needs met. Norfund has proven that increasing one is likely to increase the other. Norfund was among the first to invest in the Lake Turkana wind power plant in Kenya. Risky perhaps, but vitally important if they could only get over the first few hurdles, which they did. Once the project was well underway, major actors such as Google came on board. Today, 365 turbines stand ready to produce 15% of the energy that Kenya needs. That's why I mentioned not only successful at the beginning, but also consequential. This is how you create catalytic effects and prepare the ground for win-win and the kind of growth you create yourself. Norfund has invested more than $1 billion in clean energy and has done a great deal to overcome and reduce the real and perceived risks connected to energy development. Norfund's partnership with SN Power and Scatec Solar, which have local knowledge and the capacity to implement projects, has been vital for success. In the spirit of the 2030 Agenda, we have signaled that renewable energy and private sector cooperation through Norfund will be a priority with increased budgets and allocations by 50% in the coming 4 years. NORAD is also engaged in efforts to enhance private sector investments. According to the World Bank, we need to create another 600 million jobs worldwide by 2020. Millions of young people are entering the labor market in developing countries the coming years. In these countries, 9 out of 10 jobs are in the private sector. The private sector is absolutely key. the availability of risk capital for investment in private business activities in developing countries is crucial. That is why one of our main tasks must be to help others take risks, so risks can be reduced. Honorable Minister, friends at Norfund, if we are to eradicate poverty, we must also work to defend the values and the world order that has, after all, created so much peace and prosperity since 1945. The countries of the world must continue to cooperate and trade with each other, to reject protectionism, populism, and nationalism, and respect the rules of the game. In a world where the win-win perspective has replaced the delusion of zero-sum game, economic growth in the developed world will also help reducing poverty in the developing world and vice versa. We have to make the world safe for democracy, Woodrow Wilson said. This is true as ever, not least when fighting poverty. Just let me add, we must also make the world safe for investments and job creation. And this is exactly what Norfund is about. Again, congratulations on your achievements through these 20 years. And we have high expectations from Norfund also in the coming years. And not at least the coming 13 years until 2030. Thank you.